It's time to talk 49ers Bengals. Two-time Super Bowl rematch, 1981 and 1988. I'm sure that Chris Collinsworth is happy that this game didn't get flexed into Sunday Night Football because he probably still has some nightmares about the 49ers. Former receiver, obviously, color commentator now for NBC Sports, but Chris Collinsworth, he was drafted by Cincinnati in 1981. That was obviously the first time that the 49ers beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And then Chris Collinsworth's last career game came against the 49ers in the 1988 Super Bowl. That was played in January of 1989. So the 49ers essentially bookended Chris's career. He doesn't have to call the game. Good for him. It has been flexed to an afternoon game, though, on the West Coast. 1:25 p.m. start, 4:25 in Cincinnati, which means it's going to be dark for most of the game at Paul Brown Stadium, which means that their fans are probably going to be excited, a little bit more liquored up than they would have been earlier in the day. And it's a big contest for both teams. Right now, you have the respective 7 seeds in both the NFC and the AFC squaring off in this game. The 49ers still on the inside of that playoff picture. So is Cincinnati, despite both teams losing last week. And I think that what we have here are two teams who have been inconsistent this year, with the Bengals even more so than the 49ers. They've blown teams out and they've been blown out. And it seems that it's either one or the other. In fact, they lost by 3 scores to the Chargers last week. So this is, you don't know what Bengals team you're going to get. And they really are personification of their quarterback and their offensive play, which has been boom or bust this season with Joe Burrow and a talented group of receivers. So why don't we go through some of these keys? The 49ers are currently favored in this game by about a point, which means it's essentially a toss-up. I think a lot is going to rely on the availability of Deebo Samuel. The 49ers actually opened as underdogs, and there has recently been some optimism that Samuel might be able to play in this game, so we'll see if that's the case. Even if he's just a decoy, it really helps the 49ers offense because he's the guy that adds the threat of that running game, especially if Elijah Mitchell's banged up and isn't fully able to go. Mitchell obviously has been dealing with a lot of injuries this season. Anyway, key number 1, I've already made a separate video on this, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and watch it because I'm not going to belabor it here. But avoid special teams catastrophe if you're the 49ers. This team would be 8-4 with decent special teams play. It hasn't gotten decent special teams play against Seattle in both of those games. So the 49ers have to right the ship on special teams. Otherwise, a team like the Bengals, who, matches up decently well with them as far as efficiency goes, they're worse efficiency-wise on the aggregate, but they're capable of delivering an efficiency upset, right? Special teams can allow the Bengals to completely blow that notion out of the water and blow the 49ers out of the water, just like the Seahawks were able to take it to the 49ers thanks to special teams. So that's key number 1. Watch the other video for that. We'll quickly get to the more game-specific stuff, opponent-specific stuff for Cincinnati here. So that brings me to number 2. Neutralize defensive tackle DJ Reader on the inside. Very quietly, DJ Reader is one of Cincinnati's most effective players. Everybody's talking about Trey Hendrickson this season. He's their defensive end, formerly of the Saints, who has 13 sacks, and he's going to be matched up with Trent Williams. But DJ Reader really makes a lot of this defense tick. Cincinnati's better against the run than they are against the pass, and a lot of that is because they have 4 good down defensive linemen in the 4-3 defense. Sam Hubbard is the defensive end that's going to be working against right tackle. We'll talk about him in a second. Hendrickson's obviously going to be working against left tackle. He's been productive, and that's an obvious key, and the 49ers have a star in Trent Williams blocking him. But what DJ Reader and Larry Ogunjobi do on the inside is extremely important, not only for Cincinnati in general, but in the context of this game, because we know of the troubles that the 49ers sometimes have at right guard against good defensive tackles. And Reader is excellent against the run. He's also a good pass rusher. He's not a Chris Jones, but he's a good pass rusher. And the 49ers will have to contain him, probably with Daniel Brunskill on that right side, because the Bengals don't do that much shifting of their defensive linemen. So you're likely to see DJ Reader working against Daniel Brunskill, potentially Alex Mack with help. We'll see how the 49ers shuffle things around. But this is a domino effect kind of battle. The 49ers do need to run the ball with some kind of success to implement their formula. But B, when it comes to blocking shifts and blocking intricacies along the offensive line, if the 49ers can neutralize DJ Reader without using all too much firepower, they're going to be in much better position to execute key number three, and that's to help Tom Compton with Sam Hubbard. Compton is the 49ers' worst offensive lineman at right tackle. The injury of Mike McGlinchey has really hurt this team. It especially hurts the 49ers when they get into obvious passing downs. You saw in the 3rd and 8 from the end zone against Seattle, Carlos Dunlap, who used to play for the Bengals, by the way, steamrolled Tom Compton. He also pushed Tom Compton back into Jimmy Garoppolo on the decisive 4th down that he batted down and snuffed out the 49ers' chances with. The point is that the 49ers are better at run blocking than they are at anchoring in pass protection. So you have to get Tom Compton out run blocking because he's actually been good at that with the 49ers. So neutralizing DJ Reader on the inside is the first key toward making sure that the 49ers stay on schedule so they can actually run block and put Tom Compton in a position of strength. That's what I mean by help Tom Compton with Sam Hubbard. Hubbard has 9 sacks this season. So you have Hendrickson working on the side of Trent Williams. You're going to have Hubbard working against Tom Compton. Now, by help, you can mean literal help. You could bring tight end blocking help for Tom Compton against Sam Hubbard in obvious pass situations. And that's obviously something the 49ers should think about because it didn't go well when Compton had to single team Carlos Dunlap in obvious pass rushing situations last week. But in general, and in much more sustainable terms, helping Tom Compton starts with winning on the inside. So the 49ers need to neutralize DJ Reader on the inside. They need to establish a run game. Jimmy Garoppolo needs to complete the short passes early that move the chains. Remember, that was an issue earlier this season. He's done a better job of that lately. But in general, you have to have a complementary effort that allows Tom Compton to block Sam Hubbard on his terms. If Tom Compton can run block, he'll beat Sam Hubbard. If he has to pass block all the time, I think Sam Hubbard beats him. Key number 4, pick on Cincinnati's linebackers. This is important for the 49ers because this is the weakest unit, and it's also compromised by injuries right now for the Bengals. Logan Wilson has a shoulder injury. He's one of their top linebackers, and he's going to be out for quite some time. So you have Jermaine Pratt as the Mike linebacker, and you have Marcus Bailey as the strong side linebacker who's questionable, but obviously nickel packages and all that will come into play. The Bengals do play a 3-4. None of the 3 starting Cincinnati linebackers, including Logan Wilson, who's out, are good in coverage, and that's not a good sign against a Shanahan team. Obviously, the Bengals are better than they were when the 49ers blew them out a couple years ago, but the 49ers picked on the linebackers. They used play action. They did all that in that game that they won convincingly at Paul Brown Stadium in week 2 of the 2019 season. So the 49ers need to schematically exploit this weakness again, whether it be Jermaine Pratt or if it's Bailey if he plays, or Clay Johnson, who is one of the backup linebackers for Cincinnati. The 49ers need to work on the second level, and you could do that with Kyle Juszczyk. Maybe you could do that with George Kittle, but mostly you do that with your running backs coming out of the backfield, catching some passes. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, if he does play and is aligned to the backfield, can compromise the opposing team's linebackers as well. But just remember that Cincinnati is not good in coverage at that second level, and you exploit that. Now, in the secondary, we talk about the pass rush for Cincinnati. It's been good when they've been able to pin their ears back. You have Trey Hendrickson having that big season. Will Trent Williams neutralize him? Possibly. Will Tom Compton be able to neutralize Sam Hubbard? Depends on how well the 49ers run. But if the 49ers do get into those standard drop back situations, look out for Chidobe Awuzie. He is questionable in this game with foot injury. So I think that he's probably going to play based on the reports I've seen this week coming out of Cincinnati. But Awuzie is their best cornerback. He's at that right corner position. The left corner position with Eli Apple hasn't been nearly as good. So the 49ers, when they're picking on different parts of the Cincinnati defense, they need to think about especially picking on the side that doesn't have Chidobe Awuzie. This is a mediocre Cincinnati defense. They haven't been great this year. This Bengals team has been good when the offense has been controlling football games. Kind of like the 49ers. They don't have a dominant defense either, right? But if their offense can play ball control, imprint its will on a game, the defense looks a whole lot better. I think Cincinnati's in that boom or bust fashion as well because they have a good edge rush. DJ Reader can do a good job. It starts up front and they're solid there. They can stop the run to a generally good degree. But if that defense is overexposed, there are going to be spots where you can pick on it. Linebacker and the cornerback spot opposite Chidobe Awuzie are just two of those. And that brings me to key five. And the reason I have this down at key five is because I believe that the best defense for the 49ers remains a good offense. If you can continue to generate time of possession, win play count, and that's what the 49ers did over the course of their win streak before they went to Seattle, where they did none of those two things. But if you can resuscitate that aspect of your game, you're going to keep Joe Burrow on the sideline. And as the 49ers, you're going to keep your defense fresh. Let's take a look at what Joe Burrow has looked like from an efficiency perspective this season. Hopefully you could see that. Joe Burrow is on the bottom right quadrant of this graphic. Now, this is efficiency EPA per play with no pressure on the x-axis and under pressure on the y-axis. So theoretically, you want to be up and to the right. Kyler Murray having a great year. He's been efficient with no pressure and efficient when he's been under pressure. Jimmy Garoppolo is also in the top right quadrant. He's having a fine year, despite what you may hear. He's having an inconsistent year, but when Jimmy Garoppolo's played well, the 49ers have won, and they're 6-6. Again, they'd be 8-4 without bad special teams. So he's in the upper right quadrant. Let's just put it that way. It could be a lot worse than what the 49ers have right now. It could be Joe Burrow, who's down here on the bottom right. He's been very efficient with no pressure, but very inefficient without pressure. Maybe a state of Ohio thing because Baker Mayfield is kind of in that same quadrant, but Burrow's been more efficient without pressure than Mayfield. And here you can see Aaron Rodgers. This is interesting to me. Very efficient without pressure, inefficient with it. Reminds me of 2019 when the 49ers really sunk Aaron Rodgers because he was overwhelmed by the Green Bay offensive line couldn't handle the 49ers up front. But the point stands that Joe Burrow, as you could see here in the bottom right quadrant, has been a boomer bust kind of guy. And the Cincinnati Bengals have an extremely talented receiving core. You have, between Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, questionable for this game right now, but I think he's going to play. It's trending in a good direction. Obviously, Joe Mixon is the running back. You have weapons for Joe Burrow, and you have talent with Joe Burrow. And because of that, you have the number 8 explosive pass rate in the NFL. These guys can get after it. They can deliver plays of above 20 yards. That doesn't really bode well for a 49ers secondary that's now going to be missing Emmanuel Mosley at cornerback, right? But you also have a lot of busts from the Cincinnati offense. They rank in the bottom 5 to 7 in terms of pass block win rate, PFF pass blocking grade, sack rate for Cincinnati. They've given up 36 sacks this season and interception rate. Joe Burrow has thrown interceptions on 3.7% of his pass attempts. Jimmy Garoppolo back before this season when his interception rate was higher. It's actually gone lower this year, even with a 2 in Seattle, was at 2.7%. And he was throwing too many picks. Garoppolo was throwing too many picks at 2.7%. Burrow's at 3.7%. That's number 31 in the league, second to last among regular starting quarterbacks. So he's throwing a ton of picks. He's getting sacked a lot. And the offensive line hasn't played well, especially on the right side. Even with Riley Reif, the right tackle, expected to come back, and Trey Hopkins, the center, expected to come back from injuries. Those are two spots that are vulnerable. Those two guys have been beaten this year at center and right tackle. So expect Nick Bosa to line up on both sides as he's usually been doing this season. He's a left and right tackle work kind of guy. And expect him to try to expose what the Bengals have struggled with, and that's protect Joe Burrow. The 49ers overwhelmed the poor offensive front against the Seattle Seahawks, and I think they can overwhelm a poor offensive front again. And they can highlight the busts with Joe Burrow if they do that in this game. They can be opportunistic on the back end. But if Joe Burrow has time in this game, if the 49ers don't show up to rush, And that's entirely possible because the 49ers have struggled with the pass rush outside of Nick Bosa at points of this season. If the 49ers are able to deliver, they'll be okay. But if they can't do that, I think that Joe Burrow can have a field day throwing to Higgins, throwing to Jamar Chase, throwing to Tyler Boyd, and it could be trouble. So it's all about the pass rush for the 49ers. Which Joe Burrow will you unlock in this game? The 49ers need to unlock the bad Joe Burrow. And it all comes back down to the 49ers offense. Because if that pass rush for the 49ers is fresh and rested and they can get after it, well, in that case, you're probably going to be able to unlock the Joe Burrow that you want, the bust Joe Burrow that the 49ers can win against. It's going to be hard to beat the boom Joe Burrow, but I think they can beat the bust Joe Burrow. And the key is to win on offense. Avoid special teams catastrophes. Neutralize DJ Reader on the inside. Help Tom Compton with Sam Hubbard. That happens if you neutralize Reader and establish that run game. Let Tom Compton run block and don't pass block. And pick on the Cincinnati weaknesses defensively, namely the linebackers. Because if you do all that, you control the ball and you give yourself a chance to make Joe Burrow look bad, as he has at times this season. Remember that the Bengals have been an up and down team. They might be 7-5, but those 5 losses, a lot of them were ugly. And the 49ers can do that to the Cincinnati team too if they execute their correct formula. I do think a lot of it depends on Deebo Samuel's availability, and we'll see on that. But it's going to be right now it's a toss-up in this game. Whether or not the 49ers imprint their recipe is going to determine whether or not they're strong favorites in my book. So we'll wait and see for Sunday. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you all soon.